From Nairobi, Kenya, you're listening to the Kuza Podcast, brought to you by kuza.com.
Karibuni sana kwa Kuza Podcast today. Thank you so much, people, for joining and tuning in. We continue to build on godly conversations, and today, for those particular ones who are probably like perfectionists, those ones who are afraid of failing, those ones who probably just cast themselves out when they fail, or they consider God has done the most unnecessary thing. How could he let me down? Those of us who have not learned how to deal with the whole concept or the idea of we are human, and to some extent things will not always go the way we want them to go. To those of you who are defined by success, who are only smiling when things go well and when they do things okay, and those of us who it's just terrible for them to fail, what does it look like for you when you go through moments of failure? For some people, failure hurts them most. Why? Because their definition of who they are is not even intrinsic. It's on account of what have I achieved, what have I managed to do, what are people saying about what I have done. Now, the Bible is not silent about these realities. We know that the Bible is a bunch of people that have experienced failure in many ways. I mean, we don't even have time to talk about all of them, and my friends, they will mention some. But think about King David. He failed, right? But he was an amazing king. So how do you handle failure when it comes your way? How do you handle it? And there are multiple reasons why failure happens. And sometimes it is way out of your control. And sometimes it is really pretty much within your control, or probably even an outcome of your action. So how do you confront failure in our lives when it comes? And how do we do that in a way that glorifies God? That is the conversation for today. And so track with us as we talk about matters failure and why it's important for us to have a very critical, not necessarily critical, but a very balanced view of the moment of failure. And gentlemen, today you will help me to go through these things. Justo and Bwana Edgar, how successful do you think you guys have been in the things that you have undertaken in life? In a scale of 1 to 5, how many times do you think you've failed and how many times do you think you've succeeded?
I think I failed until I got used to failing. I don't fear failing.
You succeeded in failing?
Yes, until I don't fear failing. and that has become
Right.
one of my leadership conversations with the people I train.
Right.
That I want them to fail until they never fear failing.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have failed quite in so many things that really used to weigh me down completely. Because I'm a perfectionist, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So I could not imagine, how do you fail science subjects? How do you fail things that deal with facts that are not changing?
Mm-hmm.
So that used to bother me a lot.
Right.
And it used to weigh my spirit down.
Mm-hmm.
But I came to appreciate one thing. I'm not stupid. I'm not foolish. I am smart. I am bright.
Right.
It's only that walileta hizi vitu kwa area yenye sikuwa prepared. And I have learned to accept
Right.
myself in that.
We will deal with Einstein when we get to heaven. Edgar.
Well, I'm trying to think. I've failed a lot. I have really failed a lot. I would actually use your quote. We have succeeded in failing. So we should have two barometers, two scales that where have you succeeded in life, and second, 1 to 5, success in failure.
Right.
So give us the range. So
where have you failed in succeeding and where have you succeeded in failing?
Yeah, so in part A, I would say 1.5.
Right.
Part B, 4.5.
4.5. Right. Interesting. Now, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just the way we are wired. Myself, that one, if there's something that can also put me down, I think it's just to realize that I'm not 100%. I think that's a realization that I've also come to appreciate. Well, I am appreciating, because every failure, and it comes in very many shapes and forms and sizes. I have experienced failure in my role as a pastor, failure in my role as a husband, failure in my role as a father, failure in my role as a friend, failure in my role as a mentor, failure in my... I mean, I have not been the most perfect person that anyone could interact with. And it strikes differently, and we all know that it just hits differently. It's not pleasant. Failure you don't sit down and consider the places where you failed and you're like, yeah, man, that was a good flop. You don't sit down and think, hey, man, hapo nimedunda vizuri, man. mpaka tunakula banta na watu ambao tunaambia man hiyo nilifeel vizuri unless by the uko in, unless you're just off and something. So I want us to build that. The example that comes in a blog that we posted on our website, by the way, for those of you who have not read it, you need to read it, is about this guy wa bulb, you know, alikuwa anaitwa nani, Thomas Edison, right?
Yeah.
Ali failed 99 times. Alisema, you know, he said, quote, I never once failed at making a light bulb. I just found out 99 ways to make one. Not to make one. 99 ways not to make one. I mean, is that a perspective that most of us hold? That kind of approach, you know, and maybe before even we probably discuss on a few pointers there, but what do you think about that statement?
I think for me, it's about the attitude.
Attitude.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I think he speaks more to attitude than just the failure itself. So that when you are finding yourself, you're struggling, you're failing over and over as you keep trying, what kind of attitude do you have? So his attitude, I think, was more of, I think this is a wrong way. I've discovered a wrong way, you know, to do this, to do that. And so that that kind of attitude, I think it has a way of propelling you, you know, not to just stay down there. The way you usually see it, ukianguka hata ukitegwa na mawe, you know, you'll wake up very fast. I have heard some other leadership coach saying that you don't be quick to rise up. You might as well pick something when you are rising up.
Right.
But I think for me, it's speaking more to attitude on how you approach failure than really praising his failures. I think it's more of the kind of attitude he approached failure with.
Right. He's not enjoying the 99 ways. Edgar, what do you make out of that statement? What does that buzz in your head?
Yeah, so just to agree with Justus that he saw the failure, and instead of wallowing in self-pity or something like that, kujihurumia, he sought to see where did this not work out or so and so. And as a result, continued building up on it until the 100th time, it actually worked as he intended. It actually brought the bulb worked as he had hoped it would. And so, as he has said, we are not praising the failure, failures he's made. We are praising the journey he made to get there, that he was persistent, even in his failing. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, and for those of us who are tuning in, a problem of things that you want to do right now is to probably get a paper, pen, or open your notepad on your phone, and just as a way of contemplation, write down a few things that maybe like 3 or 5 things that you think you have failed in the past, maybe 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days, so that we can gauge you like the government. In 90 days, we will bring Lami on the road, right? Now, the past like 3 months, write down like 5 things that you definitely know, these ones I have flopped. And then let's build this conversation as we engage with those 5 things. Keep that in mind, because we'll get back to you on that. So where do we start with this issue of dealing with failure? Edgar, what are the fundamentals?
Well, you first have to ask yourself the question, where do you find your worth? Is your worth, would you say with Job? We know Job, how much he lost. He lost his children, he's lost his wealth and all that, and even maybe his kingship, because Job is thought to have been the first king of, is it the land of Uz during his time? He may have lost all that. But we see even in his failure, in losing all that, he says, blessed are you when you give it and when you take it away, because he found his worth not in himself, or his successes or failures, the livestock, the cattle, his children, all that.
Right.
He found his worth in God. He found his worth in the one who wonderfully and fearfully made him, as we know from Psalm 139:14. So that's where we first have to ask, do we find our worth in the failures we have or the successes we have? If I succeed today, will I glory in my success, or will I turn back to God and say, Lord, you're the one who's granted me this, and in you I find the joy and comfort that even though you may take this away, I'll still delight in you. Because if you are defined by success, when failure comes, what happens? you'll lose your way. You'll fall away completely and wander around because you are defined by your success. But if God defines you, you'll find comfort because you'll say, whatever, as Paul, you'll be like Paul, that he was comfortable with the less that he had and the much that he didn't have at times. Why? Because of the Lord who strengthened him. He found his worth in God. And so the question is, do you find your worth in God or in the failures and successes of life?
Just what is worth? What is this? What does this word worth mean? Because, I mean, like okay, but what is that? What does it mean?
I think when we are thinking about our value as human beings, so that we feel, of course, we are on top of the world when we succeed, and we feel as though we have not amounted to anything. We feel as though we are of a lesser value. We have lost our self-worth, of course, by going through whatever failures that we experience. So that then we want to ask ourselves again in terms of our self-worth or self-value.
Hiyo jina worth hiyo ndo nataka to explainia watu hiyo ni what is this, what is worth, what is that, what is it, how do we what is worth? Because we're saying Edgar is saying, where do you find your worth? But what is that worth? What is it? Because if you are saying that it is not in my success, surely I feel nice when I perform well. Yeah. So, I mean, that's, and when I'm not performing well, then I feel terrible. Then, I mean, help the people that are tuning in to just understand that word.
Okay. I think in terms of what I'm just connecting it in terms of, I'm connecting it with the whole conversation about our own value. Value. Yes.
So that's a synonym to it, value.
Yes. I'm looking at it in that as a synonym again for value, so that is our value, who you are as a person. Is it attached to the success that you attain as a person? So that the moment you don't achieve certain things,
yes,
you feel as though you have lost in value. You feel as though, you are a lesser person.
Right.
And like, for example, if you are going to buy some clothes outside there, and then you are like, some clothes you will be sold to in terms of their value is, 1,000 shillings. And you're like, no, the value I will attach to this is maybe 500 or 200 shillings. Now, I want us to look at that and look at the kind of value that Christ has attached to us.
Okay.
That when we were, of course, sinners, that Christ loved us so much, and we have God again loving us to a point of sending his only son and to die for us, so that you realize slaves, for example, in the Old Testament, they used to be sold 30 pieces of silver and such. And so that was the value attached to a slave. But when our God looks us from heaven, that we were worth, of course, his son, that he was ready to give his son over, for our own redemption. So when I attach my value to God and what really God has done in my life, then for me, it doesn't matter what I have gained, what I have lost in terms of this world and material things that people are pursuing. But I approach life with that kind of appreciation that God has loved, he has valued me so much with his own life, to a point of giving his own son to die for me at the cross. And I think for me, if you are to look at all the other things that humans attach their value to, you realize that they are very temporary things. And
let's mention some of these things.
Of course, people will attach their value in terms of their looks.
All right.
The money that they possess.
All right.
They will attach their value again, sometimes even to their friends. So that it's about the things that people possess, or how they look, or what they have. But all those things, they have a way of getting away from us. They can be lost anytime. But regardless of how I look, what I have or don't have, if I attach my value on God and know that God loved me and created me in his own image and likeness, I think to me that cannot be compared with anything. So that whether I'm dark skinned, light skinned, poor, rich, regardless of what I have, as in like I know before God, I am wonderfully and fearfully created. Of course, in his own image and likeness.
That's interesting. So therefore, you're saying that if somebody finds their value, which now we're saying what are you made of? I think that's what I'm hearing. Like, what are you made of? What do you know that you're made of? What defines you? You're not defined by your money. You're not defined by your success or your failure or lack of it. If you succeed in failing or you fail in succeeding, that is not what defines. We're saying that it has to be something much more eternal than what catches the eye. That's basically what you're saying. And so neither success or failure should define you. But you see, now that's easier said and done. All right. Now, most of us, we are like, yeah, right. These are just a bunch of other guys giving us that Christian jargon. Thank you so much for not helping me. But, it is critical that, you must answer that question. What defines you? Because failing, you must. Succeeding, you will in some things, definitely. And so, but just as reminding us that all these things will leave us, these things are not there eternally, and therefore we cannot place our value on shifting shadows. You want to turn to www.kuzaapp.com right about now. I'll probably just note that down somewhere so then you're able to visit it at some point later for amazing resources for your spiritual growth. We exist to bring biblical thoughts in the day-to-day things that we go through. And so you'll find a lot of content there for you. You also have a mobile app. If you're not downloading it, you can do that on your iPad, on your iOS phone, on your Android gadgets. Do that. And you'll get a lot of things right there. One of the things that you'll get in that app is daily devotionals that will help you to just go through your quiet times and growing in the Lord. For those of us who are desiring to just connect with friends who are distant and you want to remind them of the gospel and all, you want to click the Receive Christ button top right corner of the website and you'll see a video there that is sharing just the message of the gospel. You want to share that with somebody they'll probably not talk to for a long time. Just check that out and see how that one goes. If you watch it and you're the one who needs to get born again, you can reach out to us. Just send us a message right there on the link, and that's going to be a good thing. Now, let's continue to build this conversation. So remember those 5 things that I told you to write about. I want to ask you, of those 5, how many of those ones really put you down when you think about them? How much have they messed your approach or your view of yourself? And answer the question, have they defined your worth? Have they defined you? Have they been the reason why you are not excited or you're excited? What if they're taken away? What will remain of you? Think about that as you continue on. So we are not defined by our failures or successes. Now, we don't even have enough time to go into the nitty-gritties of what failure is. And we are probably, somebody tuning in today is a parent, is a child, is a school dropout, or somebody just going through difficult times, things are not working, business has flopped and they think they're failed, or somebody probably tuning in and have just done some stupid things and they're genuinely just receiving the consequences of their actions. Now, how do we move forward from the point of failure and the things that have put us down and however they are messing our minds and our hearts? What are some things that we can do to move forward and not just get stuck on that, Edgar?
Thinking, I would think first pray, but after prayer, it's turning to your family or your church family when things become hard. Because as much as many people will lie to themselves, I can do this on my own. Mm-hmm. That's the lie we've been fed, that it's all in you. There's nothing you need to do in order to make sense of life or anything around. You don't need to go to other people to help you make sense of why these things are happening. So the world has said, just look to yourself. However, we are here telling you, no, the Lord has put us into the world for a reason, into community. Mm-hmm. The reason God created us is for us to fill and multiply the earth. And in that breeds community, it breeds culture. And one of the ways that is exemplified is through the church. The church is the family of God, the family that God instituted through his Son to ensure that we are able to press on forward for the prize of the upward call of God in Christ Jesus, that we are called the dwelling place of God in Ephesians 2:19-22. And so as the dwelling place of God, we if we see, because we are the living stones, we know from 1 Peter 2:5, if we see a stone having a crack, we will want to know, why does this stone have this crack? And so that's the idea of family, turning to them when things become hard, going to them and telling them, so and so happened. I failed at this. Maybe I committed such and such a sin. Could you help me make sense of this? Could you help care for me in order that I can press on forward, so that I may not lose sight of Christ? I may not lose sight of what is eternal. As we've said, if we are to define ourselves on what is eternal, we have to have other people, because the reality is we are not perfect beings. We are still in our bodies of flesh. And so looking to what is eternal will always be difficult for us. And so the church comes in and helps us make sense of why we failed, of what we are doing, of how we are to work this out and fix our gaze on Christ.
All right.
Because as we see in Hebrews 3, that they are there to exhort us so long as it is today. Hebrews 10, they are to stir us up to love and good works. So we to turn to them when it's hard.
You know, we have been we as the church have been accused of a lot of cliche conversations, just as. So how do we help somebody just to weave past cliche to really understand what Edgar is saying? It's critical. Turn to your church, especially you, but pray. We know fellas, it's just like, you guys keep on telling us this pray thing. What are you guys talking about? How do we weave through? Especially somebody who has that kind of mentality. Na wewe ni mchungaji, so tuambie bana.
Yeah. I think it is. I think it's true. You know, for people who have not developed, of course, the culture of prayer too. You see, if you have that history of prayer, you know the power that prayer holds.
Okay.
And so that even when you feel you're low, that will still not bar you from praying. Or when you feel as though, or when you have even experienced whatever failure you've experienced. I think the biggest challenge that I've seen with myself and even with others is really getting to appreciate, we've said over and over, failure as part of life. That this failure is inevitable in our world.
Right.
And even for me as an individual, the moment I failed, you realize that you as much as yes, you get failed and failing is part of it, but until you come to that appreciation and realization that you will fail and fail over and over, then you realize that for me, accepting that is one of those steps towards us overcoming the whole issue to do with failure, so that then that will propel you, to get, as even for the family of faith. The problem is that we've heard, Marvin, is that you see, we have always, even in church, presented success, material things. The moment people fail, we present them as sinners. We start looking at the areas. Is it a failure in your spiritual life? Or is it that you're not giving? Is it that you're not praying enough? So
even the things of God, we are attaching them to some perishables.
We keep we keep doing all that, and we even keep pushing people as though sometimes they are failure. Pray harder. Read the Bible harder. Go to church even harder. I think getting to share our own stories in the church, so that it doesn't appear as though for us we are doing so well. We have always lived experiencing success and we've never failed. I think one thing that I thank God, even with my leaders that we do, I keep sharing with them all my struggles in my journey in leadership. And even currently when I fail, I make sure that with my leaders, those who are not accustomed to failing, I keep sharing with them and tell, hey guys, ebu angalia hapa vile hata mimi nimeuma nje on this specific thing, And when I share with them, I've realized now they are even rejoicing. Like they are like, like I had sometimes back my chairman coming and telling me, hey Pasi, kuna kitu uliniambia hapa hivi, and I did not listen to you, and I realized it worked against me, and I wish I had listened to you. Now he is in that space where he can share with me his failures as well, because I have also made myself vulnerable, in terms of the areas that I have fallen. So I think in the community of believers, it's good for us to be authentic. It's good for us to share where we are doing well and
Right.
what we are really also struggling in,
Mhm.
so that people don't feel as though we are holier than thou, as though we have made it and they are the ones who are failing somewhere in their personal or spiritual life.
Right.
So I think the family of faith brings in this together, that you are able to encourage one another.
Right.
Yes, and Paul has done a lot of that, sharing his testimony,
Yes.
and
Yes.
he shares, of course, with the Philippians church, telling them, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation,
Right.
whether well-fed or hungry. So if you are an apostle, you preacher, you are a teacher, you are an evangelist. If Paul was in lack and he has learned to be content, if he had plenty, he has learned to be content in all situations. Let us stop making this look like a big deal to the congregation, to a point that they feel as though there is an area they don't measure up to the standard of Christ.
You're talking,
That's
and,
because they have failed in
and there's
a
some
way.
pastors who definitely tell their congregation there's no way they can come walking to church and the congregation is there. Watoe pesa ya mafuta. I mean, it's a mess. There are people who are definitely making the gospel not be what it should be, but so are you saying then in essence that for those of us who are struggling with all these 5 things that they are writing and thinking about right now, that failing is gonna happen, it's gonna come, and is that the only thing, and that success? I mean, are all these things inevitable? We will fail and succeed, or is there a way that one can always be the constant?
Of course, there isn't. There is no way that you'll have one as a constant. For me, one thing I have come to again to appreciate is that even at times, even being in lack,
Right.
I've always come to see it as also God's provision, for Him to shape me, to mold
Right.
me to be like Christ. The lack and the plenty and even being in want,
Yes.
I think they have all served the greater good of transforming my life and making me more like Christ.
Right.
And so that whenever a friend of mine in high school, I remember telling me that just as 3 words I want you never to forget in your life, he told me that I always remember it will end. And he was insinuating, the success, they have their end, the failures have their end,
Right.
that there is no situation that is permanent. Yes, I could be in pain right now. That feeling of pain, at some point it will come to end and get another again feeling of happiness and joy.
Right.
And even if you are celebrating, even those people who seem to have it all, there is still some areas in their lives that you could realize that, they are not making ends meet.
Right.
It could be a failure in family, parenting, like you mentioned, a pastoral role or a mentoring role. There could be some areas that all of us, you could be doing one very well in one and very poorly in another. So
Right.
that is for me the nature of life.
That's
that
the
all
nature of
these, they are
life.
intertwined.
Right.
Yeah.
Edgar.
And so in that nature of life, the question is, are you holding firm to the faith?
Right.
Are you still trusting in God and not leaning on your own understanding? That's
Right.
the question. In those 5 things you've written down, are you looking at them and saying, Lord, I look to you, please help me here. Please guide my steps here, because as Christ promised us, He sent us the Holy Spirit to help guide us into all the truth. And so,
Right.
and so what we are to do with that is to fulfill the command He's told us to
Right.
go before Him with our needs, to not be anxious in doing so, because He's there to help us and to guard our minds and hearts.
Right.
And so holding firm to that faith, holding fast to Christ, so that whether in little or whether in much, like Paul, we'll trust in God because He's the one who
Right.
gives us strength.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All those 5 things. One thing that for sure you need to sit back and appreciate that you're going to fail. If you think that 5 is enough, you're going to fail again, and there's some things that are going to come. But also, you will succeed. There are some things that you're definitely just doing them and they're coming and they're working. And just as said, you will fail, you will succeed. That is life. But the question is, where is your worth? There's an amazing hymn that you need to listen to by Keith and Christy Getty. My worth is not in what I own. It's not in the strength of flesh and bone. They say it is not in skill or name. It is not in win or lose. It is not in pride or shame. They say that our rejoicing should be in our Redeemer, our greatest treasure, the wellspring of our soul. In fact, for those of us who are there on Instagram, mnatry kutesa na mnaeka ma filters 1000 just so that you can look successful, we are reminded in that hymn that my two wonders here, that I confess my worth and my unworthiness. And you need to have those two things at par with you. But he also reminds us, I think one amazing thing is there, is like beauty ends. It comes and it goes. Your worth should be in your Redeemer. I think that is the only thing that will not, fade away. Jesus Christ, your Redeemer. Where do you place your confidence and your worth of all those 5 things? How are you doing? If that one is putting you down, then you need something greater than that, because some more is going to come. There's going to be a little bit more failure coming your way because you're human. And success is also going to come your way. So you want to find yourself focusing on the most important thing. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your conversations. May you continue to walk away from success in failing and failing in success. But let's continue just to build ourselves in this most holy faith. For you, tune in, www.kuzaapp.com. That's the place you need to be. May the Lord help you through even as you work your way in matters failure. Remember, your worth is not in what you owe. God bless you.
Thank you for listening to the Kuza Podcast. Brought to you by kuzaapp.com, an online ministry with blogs, videos, podcasts, and a mobile app. Make sure to subscribe to get more content to help you grow spiritually.